Good morning and welcome back to Margin. This morning we're going to talk about how to save money fast without cutting what matters to you. So let's jump right into it. So when saving money, it can be so easy for us to just go cold turkey, to basically drop those aspects of life that are enjoyable to us, not realizing that those sacrifices that you make, although they may be good for the temporal, they're not good for your quality of life and your enjoyment, your joy that you get out of life. And so you want to look at how to save money in those areas that are less impactful and start there first. Now, of course, if you have a high amount of debt or you are experiencing a significant life change in the near future from a layoff or from a health challenge or something like that, that obviously merits a bigger change. But what I'm referring to is getting things within range by the method of reducing those aspects that don't really matter that much to you. So if you don't know where you're spending your money, you won't know what to cut. And so it's important for you to get on a plan to spend. Going into this week's series, I really wanted to jump into how to feasibly do that, how to adopt certain aspects so that you're building and maintaining a plan to spend. Now, a plan to spend will really then reveal to you what areas need to be cut, what areas need to be reduced, and what areas really are not bringing that much value to you in the first place. And so looking at your plan to spend, if you don't have one yet, we'll be going through the steps and in the next few episodes. And those steps will outline how to start by building a plan to spend and how to build that out so that it's building in those aspects that matter most to you. So my goal for you today is really to look at your finances from an objective perspective, taking your feelings out of the equation and looking at it from a standpoint of where you're at today and what things you can scale back on in order to give you a better quality of life. So looking at the last 30 days of your spending, whether through your bank account or your credit card, you'll be able to quickly identify what things really matter to you. Whether you enjoy giving back, whether you enjoy building a lifestyle or an image for yourself or something like that, you'll be able to view all those transactions and see what things actually matter to you. So there's a book I recently read called Your Money or Your Life. It really focuses in on where your life energy goes to and realizing that based on where you spend your time, how much you make per hour, and how you spend the money that you make per hour that you allocate to that, you are giving away your life energy towards things that may or may not actually matter to you. And so it's important for you to look at the last 30 days of your bank statement, of your credit card, to realize what things you are spending your life energy on. Because every dollar that you spend on aspects that don't truly add value to your life are wasted hours that you gave in life energy. And so you want to make sure that you are looking at your plan to spend through that lens, through a lens of how do I best allocate my time and get paid for that time, then utilize that pay in order to invest in things that actually matter to me. So now that you have a plan to spend in place, what will be important is going through each of those line items, all the line items that you have built out in that budget. And if you don't have that built out yet, that's fine. We will be going into that process this week and showing you how to build out a plan to spend. But in the meantime, if you do have a budget, look at those specific expenses that are hitting each of those budget line items. And what you'll find is that some things are necessary and some things aren't. And so my second step really comes down to looking at what is necessary and what's not. And the first aspect of that is to look at what's absolutely necessary. So that may be your utilities or your housing, that those aspects that are part of maintaining your lifestyle. The second aspect comes down to somewhat necessary. Now that may be something like cable or Wi-Fi, depending on where you live, whether you go into an office for work each day, so on and so forth. So those aspects may or may not be able to be cut if you need them to. And then the third aspect really comes down to undecided. So that may be a phone insurance plan. That may be something that does not necessarily add a lot of value to you, but you maybe got pressured into it when you purchased a certain item. But something that could go if you deem it not necessary in your world. So the fourth one comes down to somewhat unnecessary. So that may be your morning coffee run. It may be eating out daily. Those types of things where you could opt for a less expensive alternative. And then the last aspect comes down to what's absolutely unnecessary. So that may be the fifth aspect where you're looking at subscriptions or you're looking at other aspects that you can cut out that don't add any value. And if you cut them, you wouldn't necessarily miss them. So those that have been defined as undecided or somewhat unnecessary or absolutely unnecessary, those items should be able to be cut immediately. Unless you have a service contract or you have a lease of some kind or something else that confines you within the parameters of keeping that item, you should be able to get rid of that quickly and be able to cut that cost when it's not something that is necessary for your joy or your enjoyment in life. So from this point, you'll really want to look at those aspects that you have deemed necessary to some extent or another. And those, then you will look at what I consider step 3, which is looking at alternatives, looking at lower cost alternatives that give you the same fulfillment, but at a lower cost. And so I remember doing this, going through this process and putting a budget into place and then looking at those things that are necessary and those things that are not necessary, and then looking for alternatives. And I remember going through that process, and one of those aspects that I cut out had to do with coffee. So I decided that my morning run to the coffee shop was unnecessary, that it was something that added time and energy and cost where it was not necessary. But in addition to that, I found a healthier alternative in drinking tea instead of coffee. And so some people, of course, the coffee drinkers, and they'll not move away to that alternative. But for me, I was ready to make a change. And so I took on, drinking tea. Now in the mornings, I would actually make it pretty much the same way I would make coffee. So I would brew it. Then I would add cream and sugar to it. So I would make it simple. And so with that not only helped me transition easily to replace it with something that was, in my eyes, something that was a better alternative, that was actually less expensive, but also was something that was helping me to transition out of drinking too much coffee and having a bit of a habit with that. So much like that habit with transitioning from coffee to tea, you'll want to look at your finances, look at your plan to spend from a standpoint of what aspects you can transition to a healthier alternative. So I've seen people drop their subscriptions to things like Netflix in order to take on going out for a bike ride or something like that. Now, that's not in the necessarily in the same genre, but you'll want to look at those aspects where, hey, if I need to stay in shape and I'm spending X amount of time per day on a certain activity that I actually have to pay for that is not keeping me in shape, how can I switch that out? How can I change that out for a healthier, lower cost alternative? So my call to action today really comes down to looking at how you can save money fast by putting a simple plan to spend in place. So at least you know what you're spending, then being able to view each of those line items based on their level of importance. And those items that aren't important to you, stop spending money on them. And then from there, those items that do matter to you, look and see if there are any healthy alternatives inexpensive alternatives to what you're spending in what areas that may be able to help you drive down your costs without losing quality of life. If this information is helpful to you, please do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're reminded to come back on a daily basis. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.